Early in August 1973, two of Ted and Margaret's sons, armed with a camera and tape recorders, went to Upper Hutt to visit friends and relations to make this presentation. Cecil and Henry Salisbury tell of events during the courting days of Margaret Orr and Ted Salisbury.
I remember Ted telling me not very long ago, this after the war, after he came back in the hospital ship, and he was invited by Margaret's brother, I think, Arthur, to lunch. And it was a sort of case of love at first sight. And that's when it really first started. And then whether he got onto Andy Conn to ask your mother out, I wouldn't be sure on that, but that's how she first came out, was to stay with Con. So of course and they got to know more of each other, and it pleased the two of them, and that helped the situation. That was very early days. All this that I've been telling you about Margaret visiting us at Upper Hutt took place before the Orrs moved to a farm at Bunnythorpe, and this must have been rather a blow to Ted when Margaret moved off. To everyone's surprise, Ted announced the fact that he was going to an all-day meeting at Bunnythorpe. An all-day meeting that Ted was thing was never done. And it was there that various things happened, and in spite of quite strong opposition, Ted seemed to win the day, and the question was asked, and the answer was yes.
One of the greatest problems in life was getting to Bunny. Bunny, of course, was short for Bunnythorpe, where Margaret lived. And she had purchased a single-banger, fixed-engine motorbike called a BAT, commonly known as the Bat. But the Bat wouldn't go over the hills. The Bat was all right on the flats. Ted was full of ideas, and he had a sister that was very, very helpful in these things, and a good old horse called Tommy. Con got on and rode Tommy, and Ted rode the bike until they got to Moonshine Hill, and then they all hitched up together. No collar, just hooked onto a saddle, and away they went up Moonshine Hill. Poor old Tommy, it must have been a pretty hard pull for him, pulling by his saddle. And anyway, once they got to the top of Moonshine Hill, there were no more steep hills before he got to Bunny. So the Bat took him to Bunny. On one occasion, I remember he left the Bat at Bunny and came back on Laurie's Triumph.
Mrs. Joan Hilton remembers a most exciting time in her life as wedding preparations were made, and a thrilled child held with Aunt Meg's special day.
How the years roll back when I think of your wedding 50 years ago. I remember Mother making me the little cream net frock and cap, both trimmed with rosebud trimming, and buying the little posy basket I carried, and which contained those lovely cream primroses off Grandma Tiller's farm paddocks. Every time I catch the smell of primroses now, I always think of the day you were married. I remember many happy days spent at your place at Upper Hutt, and how kind you always were to my mother and father. I know they always appreciated it. What fun we all had going on blackberrying excursions in the Upper Valley.
In a little house built with loving care, Ted took his bride. A traditional tin canning was afoot, and Wilf and Jessie Munn remember for us.
Do you remember them in Henry Street years ago?
Oh yes, quite well.
When they first moved there?
Yes, I remember the house being built. And I remember Margaret and Ted getting married, and we were all prepared for when they came home to Tinketlin.
I was the leader of it.
And
And what did you get up to for that, though?
I'm sure everybody in the street heard it.
What about the chimney? Anything done with the chimney at all?
Yes, I think there was a pane of glass put on top of the chimney, but I think that was one of Ernie's ideas, or Henry.
Well, they were in this too, were they, do you think? Oh,
Yes, I think Ernie and Henry were in it. Anyhow, we all got inside eventually and had a cup of tea and one thing and another.
I've known Mrs. Ted Salisbury ever since she was married and have always had a very high esteem for her. And I remember with pleasure the time when Howard was born, when we went over, and how proud Ted and Margaret were of Howard. And over the years we've always had a very happy friendship. Whenever we've met, we've always been very happy to see one another and to look upon one another as real friends.
After several years working with Ralph Scholes, it became known that Ted Salisbury was a reliable tradesman who could turn his hand or his hammer and saw to almost anything required. Besides building in timber, Ted had an affinity for stones and cement, and it was not hard to find photogenic examples of his work. One of the many visitors to Henry Street was Mr. Wilf Behrman.
The first periods that I came in contact with your father and mother, it's probably due to my grandfather being an inventor, that coming across your father, he was so ingenious and such a brilliant sort of gentleman, doing all sorts of fantastic things in his workshop. I can remember one most interesting scientific experiment being conducted in the basement. It was waste engine oil being filtered. Many other things that I noticed was the improvising of motor car parts and converting them into concrete mixers and many other things.
Yes.
As a summary, I would say he was a bit of a genius and a great inventor. I must pass a remark about your mother. She was a fantastic lady. I would say a real slave to all the family and always pleasant.
Built to provide access across the river to Mr. Frank Benger's farm, a swing bridge testifies to Ted's versatility. Mr. Len Benge recalls some of the details of its construction.
The swing bridge that Dad built for your dad. Do you remember Dad building that?
Yeah, I remember that quite well.
It was mainly used to take the milk out, wasn't it? That was his main,
That was what was put up
the main
for.
purpose.
All the decking on that bridge was shipped full of Marrow. They pulled her to pieces, and all the decking on that was used to deck the...
Was it teak?
Yes.
Teak.
Bridge one time was called Marrow, and that was the reason why it was called Marrow.
Oh, I see. Very big abutments at the end, isn't it? Concrete abutments.
Yes,
very, very
right.
large.
Yeah.
Gate there, yes. For those days, for drilling rock and that sort of thing, be hand drilling, wouldn't it?
Oh, it was hand drill, sledgehammer.
Sledgehammer.
Mangaroa Valley supports an active farming community, which knew Ted Salisbury's Model T well as he built barns, sheds and cow bales. Mr. Whiteman talks about his shed, one of the biggest jobs Ted undertook in the valley.
The first job Ted did for us was the workshop where we keep the tractor and the trucks. Well, no, the two, just really the tractor shed now. And that would be, I think it was maybe about 1935. The big shed was in 33, 34, so the big shed may have come first.
You had a bit of a blow, I believe.
Yes, blew.
Tell us about that.
Well, first of all, the first one blew away. It was only built, of Bora timber. And then, of course, we got Ted onto the job building this other one, and went to town and picked up the gear and picked up 10 big principals and ever so many long railway irons. And, of course, Ted got his thinking cap on, and he soon made it into we soon had a big shed. And you asked Ted about the time, and we had it half built, and we got a raging southerly. That shed today, you can tell Ted, that shed today is insured for $18,000.
The actual cost of building it, it was $1,300 without our own time on it, so that just shows you what the things are going. Because it's 5,600 square feet. But,
was there special equipment hired to build that shed?
no, it is all with the gin pole.
Did the builder have to buy new equipment for this?
No,
Building this shed?
no, it was all built. This was we had the old Fordson tractor and this gin pole, and put all the principles up on that with bits of wire rope and that. No, it was a great job. There's no doubt about it.
Covering the roof was a pretty big job.
It was a big job. And,
Used a bit of treacle.
Yeah.
What did you use that for?
Well, one day, you know, we were just about dinner time, and they put a few sheets of iron on. We went to lunch, and old Ted said, I think it's going to be too steep for us to stick on. Anyway, we went and had lunch, and they got a start before we came back, and they were sitting there quite merrily on this roof. And I couldn't make out. I said, why, just looking down? He said, he told us the secret treacle. Oh, no, there's no doubt about it, but we have a lot here at Ted Salisbury, and we do really, you know. Everyone comes around and reckons that, well, I've played a part. Certainly I had to help, you know, be in with him, but he did a great thing in making the buildings for us around here. I think your dad got, if he remembers right, 3 and 6 an hour, and he thought he was getting a wonderful wage in those days. And of course, everything was cheaper than the iron was £20 a ton, you know, £20 a ton. Those railway, well, not railway, they're tram lines actually. They were 10 bob each. That's all to buy that.
10 bob a foot today.
Yeah, gee, that was the difference here. Everyone was, I don't know, just as happy as they are today, probably.
I think Dad was.
Yes.
Enjoyed the job.
Yes.
Got a lot out of it.
Well, we did, yes. There was a lot of cementing done down there. And, of course, even old Henry used to say your dad knew what he's doing. And the dam, of course, that's another big monument will go down to your dad, because he had the help of an old man Pulley. You know, he's a civil engineer, and he worked in with him and the two of them and that. And of course, we just went up and helped, but after all, he was sort of the man who built it, and it's all said and done. But that was a great job, that. But that's how it went. But, oh no, people come round here and look at these things, but I don't mind really saying to anybody that if it hadn't been for Ted coming over and helping us, I don't think anyone else would have taken the same interest. He took a real personal interest.
During this time, Margaret was coping with a family of 4 lively boys, 2 welcome girls, and alterations to enlarge the house to accommodate them all. The children have happy memories of a mother who was always there with a sympathetic ear for childish troubles and worries. Like all children, they took their parents for granted, and only now realise how hard they worked to feed and clothe them all. Margaret found time during school holidays for outings, the Blackberry expeditions, which were red letter days for the younger ones, and welcome breaks from household routine for everyone. Her quiet and steadfast faith was a sure anchor for the family as they grew up.